Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Poland Daily History. Today we are at the city of Lublin, one of the oldest and most historical city of Eastern Poland. We'll be going to the Catholic University of Lublin to talk to a professor, a Polish Canadian, who wrote the first history book in English about Lublin. Lublin is actually the city that hosted one of the most historical events in Polish history, known as the Union of Lublin, 450 years ago exactly, right here in Lublin.
Yes.
And I was wondering if you can go a little bit into the details of what this union meant for the city and for Poland as a whole.
Well, the Union of Lublin, as you said, 450 years ago, created the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Formally created the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. As I mentioned earlier, in the earlier episode, previously the union between Lithuania and the Kingdom of Poland was a personal union.
Right.
Now it became formalized. One of the reasons for this was the fact that the Jagiellonian, well, it was something that was in the making. But the Jagiellonian dynasty was dying out, shall we say. Right. The last Jagiellonian king did not have a male heir. And well, Lublin was an important, so he needed to hold a Sejm. A Sejm between Lublin, between the Kingdom of Poland and Lithuania. Now, it had been agreed upon that that each kingdom or duchy would have its own Sejm.
Sure.
But if there were any matters that they had to deal with, that either there would be a Sejm either in the town of Parczew or in Lublin. Towards the end of the second half of the 16th century, when the Union of Lublin took place, Parczew was downhill. So there had been these Polish-Lithuanian Sejms earlier, right, in Parczew, but no more. So Lublin had prospered. It had, even the castle had been modernized.
Right.
It had gained a Renaissance architecture. Now, of course, the chapel, of course, remained the chapel.
Yeah, the chapel's still there.
But it was a kind of a very appropriate place for such a momentous event. And so, of course, and it could host all the nobility and so on, the members of the Sejm, that those entitled to participate in the Sejm that would come to the city. It was over 10,000 people at the time. And not to mention a number of international diplomatic sort of envoys from different countries, from Madrid to Moscow practically, because the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth was a fairly a regional power, but right. And so the Sejm took a number of months. At some points, the Lithuanians were upset. And this affected the Kingdom of Poland to the extent that the king took away some of the Ruthenian lands from the Lithuanians, and it became part of the kingdom, incorporated in the Kingdom of Poland. But at any rate, it was successful. Let's say successful, except for one of the future problems connected with that union was that it would have been better to, at least some historians claim it would have been better for them to have included the Ruthenian nobility as representing Ruthenia, as later on that became a problem. Right, of course, at one point. And so they were disaffected, right, because they didn't have the same status as Poland, as the Kingdom of Poland and Lithuania.
Right.
Lublin was the city in which Polish and Lithuanian nobles agreed to form a federal union between the two countries in the year of 1569. The king signed the act in Lublin Castle on July 4th. The Union of Lublin formed one of the largest and most powerful states in Europe, consisting of around a dozen nations. In an effort to ease tensions and further religious tolerance in this new massive state, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth adopted the Warsaw Confederation in 1573.
So the Union of Lublin essentially created this vast state that incorporates the whole Poland and Lithuania. I would imagine the conflict between religions, let's say, or different culture becoming an issue, and hence the signing of the Warsaw Confederation. I was wondering if you can elaborate a little bit about what that is and how that helped with the union.
Well, yes, the Warsaw Confederation was shortly after the last Jagiellonian king died, because then you had to elect monarchs.
Right.
And this was in the hands of the nobility from both parts of the kingdom, shall we say, of the Commonwealth, as it's known. And so they were worried that a king from outside wouldn't. So actually, there was a good degree of religious tolerance among the last Jagiellonians,
right.
but the nobility were worried that a new king might not understand the situation.
Understandable.
So and so they came up with this declaration that of toleration of all the Christian denominations. So that at that time, that of course meant the Western Catholics, the Latin Catholics. You even had the Union Catholics at more or less at that time. You had the Orthodox, and you had the Protestants, because the Reformation also took hold in the Kingdom of Poland. In Prussia, that was also part of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. It took strong roots in Prussia. And it even, an interesting sort of detail connected with this is that at that point, since the Union of Lublin was such an important event, there was even a faction that felt that Lublin might be the new capital.
Yeah.
But a stronger faction, a more Catholic faction, shall we say, chose Warsaw.
Almost.
Because of the Protestants in Lublin. The Protestants in Lublin, they weren't that numerous, but you had a small group of Arians who were non-Trinitarians.
Okay.
And non-Trinitarians were anathema even for the major Reformation sort of branches of Christianity at the time. I think that might have been one of the reasons why Warsaw, not to mention, that might have been one of the reasons for that Lublin being passed over.
So when you described the Confederation of Warsaw, you said that it incorporated all the branches of Christianity, but at the time, the Jewish population is also on the rise, and I was wondering how the Jewish religion fit into the whole big picture.
Well, yes. The Jews are settled in many parts of Poland, and of course, where you had trade, then that would be a very attractive place. So you had a significant Jewish population in Poland, in Lublin in the 16th century, of course. And more or less around that time, they were not allowed in the old town. So that's where you had the citizens of Lublin. They had their own terrain outside of the castle, where they had their settlement for centuries, actually. And they even wanted to defend themselves from the Christians, so they gained a special right that Christians weren't allowed to enter their part of the city,
right.
and
the city allowed it.
And the city gained rights to the vice versa. It wasn't for centuries before. Actually, under the partitions, that you had Jews actually buying property in the old town.
Right. As we have seen today, Lublin has a very long, yet at times dramatic history. But places such as the Catholic University of Lublin sufficiently demonstrated the city spirit and their love for freedom. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. I'll see you next time on Poland Daily History.